HOA. President Marlene Whitaker sent a tow truck into my private driveway at 6:32 in the morning to take my brother's old work truck. She stood beside it in a cream blazer, holding a violation notice like she had already won, telling the driver the board had voted, and I had no right to stop them. By lunchtime, she had added $800 in fines, threatened a lien on my home, and told the whole neighborhood I was refusing to follow the rules. I didn't yell, I didn't block the truck. I just asked for the one thing she didn't have: written authorization. What Marlene didn't know was that my doorbell camera had already recorded her talking to the tow driver before I ever stepped outside. And one sentence from that recording proved she had built the punishment before she ever had the authority. To understand why that truck mattered, you need to know who Cole was. My name is Thomas Harris, but everybody in Cedar Ridge Estates just calls me Tom. I was 64 years old when this happened, semi-retired, and old enough to know a man can lose a lot in life and still keep going if he has something left that reminds him who he used to be. For me, that something was a white 2001 Ford F-250. The faded blue lettering on both doors still said Harris Cole Plumbing. Cole was my older brother. We bought that truck together when our knees still worked, our backs still forgave us, and we thought a good handshake meant more than a 3-page contract. Cole passed 3 years before Marlene tried to tow it. I kept the truck registered, I kept it insured, I kept the tires aired up and the engine running. The paint was tired, and the toolbox lids had more scratches than shine, but that truck had paid mortgages, hospital bills, grocery bills, and more than one emergency repair for neighbors who could not afford a plumber on a Sunday. To Marlene Whitaker, it was an eyesore. To me, it was the last business card my brother and I ever shared. Cedar Ridge Estates was usually quiet in the mornings. Sprinklers ticked across trimmed lawns, garage doors hummed open, retirees walked small dogs before the heat came in. I had lived there 9 years, long enough to know which neighbors waved, which ones complained about leaf blowers, and which ones treated HOA rules like scripture. Marlene Whitaker belonged to that last group. She was the president of the Cedar Ridge HOA, and she carried that title like a badge. Cream blazer, pearl earrings, clipboard pressed to her chest, phone camera always ready. She had a way of talking to people that made ordinary questions sound like disobedience. That Tuesday morning, I was pouring coffee when I heard a heavy diesel idle outside. Then came the grinding sound. A tow truck. I looked through the living room window and saw amber lights flashing across my driveway. The tow truck was backed halfway onto my concrete. The driver was lowering his hook toward my F-250. Marlene stood beside him, holding a violation notice like she had already won. I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. "Marlene," I said, keeping my voice even, "why is there a tow truck in my driveway?" She turned slowly, like she had been waiting for an audience. "Good morning, Mr. Harris," she said. "The board has voted to remove the commercial vehicle from your property." The tow driver paused and looked at me. "My property," I said. Marlene smiled wider. "Your property is still subject to community standards." I came down the steps slowly. I did not shout. I did not walk toward the hook. I did not block the truck. One thing I learned, after 40 years of plumbing work, was that people who want you angry are usually trying to make your anger the story. "That truck is registered," I said. "It is insured, it runs, it's parked in my private driveway. Show me the written authorization." Marlene lifted the paper on her clipboard but did not hand it to me. "This is your final violation notice." "I did not ask for a notice," I said. "I asked for the written authority to tow a vehicle from my driveway." The tow driver cleared his throat. He was younger, maybe early 30s, wearing a red shirt with a company logo on the pocket. He kept one hand near the control lever, but he did not move it. "Marlene," he said carefully, "do we have the signed tow authorization?" Her smile changed. "Only for a second. But I saw it." "It is being processed," she said. The driver frowned. "I was told it was already approved." "It is approved," she snapped. "I am the HOA president." "That is not what he asked," I said. By then, 2 neighbors had come outside. Mrs. Alvarez stood across the street in a blue robe. Dan Miller leaned against his garage with a coffee mug in his hand, pretending not to watch while watching every second. Marlene noticed them too. That was when her voice got louder. "This is exactly why rules exist," she said, holding up the notice so the neighbors could see it. "Commercial vehicles lower the appearance of the entire community. We cannot have residents treating Cedar Ridge like a storage yard." I felt heat rise in my chest, but I kept my hands at my sides. "That truck is how I paid for this house," I said. "And now," she replied, "it is a violation." The words landed harder than I expected. Not because she was right. Because she said it in front of people who had waved at me for years. Well, she made it sound like I was some careless man dragging down the neighborhood, instead of the man who had fixed half that street as shut-off valves for free. I looked back at the tow driver. "Before you touch that truck, I want your name, your company information, and a copy of whatever document says you can enter my driveway." The driver stepped away from the controls. Marlene's face tightened. "Mr. Harris," she said, "intimidation will not work here. The board made its decision last night." Last night. That sentence stayed with me. I had lived in Cedar Ridge long enough to know how HOA meetings worked. Meetings were posted, agendas were emailed, votes were recorded. Even when the board wasted half an hour arguing about mailbox colors, there was always some kind of paper trail. I had received no meeting notice, no agenda, no hearing, no appeal letter, no chance to respond. Just Marlene in my driveway before breakfast with a tow truck. I took out my phone and photographed the tow truck's plate, the company name on the door, the hook position, and the paper on Marlene's clipboard from where I stood. She immediately raised her own phone higher. "Are you recording me? I am documenting what is happening on my property. This is HOA enforcement. This is my driveway." For a moment, nobody said anything. Then, Marlene stepped closer to the driver and lowered her voice. "Not enough." "Just hook it," she said. "He has had plenty of warning." I looked at her. "What warning?" She snapped her head back toward me. "Do not play games, Mr. Harris. You received notice." "When?" Her mouth tightened. "The board has already acted." That was the second time she avoided the question. The driver took another step back. "Mom," he said, "I'm not hooking anything without signed authorization." Marlene stared at him like he had betrayed the neighborhood. "You were dispatched by the association." "I was dispatched by a phone call," he said. "That is not the same thing." That was the first time I saw her lose control of the scene. Only slightly. Only around the eyes. But it was there. She marched up my driveway just far enough to slap the notice under my windshield wiper. She pressed it there with 2 fingers, then smiled again for the neighbors. 48 hours, Mr. Harris," she said. "After that, the fines increase." Then she turned and walked back toward the street, her heels clicking against my concrete like she owned every inch of it. The tow truck left without my F-250. For a minute, I just stood there beside the old Ford, listening to its cooling engine tick in the morning air. The notice fluttered under the wiper. I pulled it free and read the top line. "Final violation notice." Below that was the date. And that was the first thing that made my stomach tighten. Because Marlene had just told me the board voted last night. But the notice in my hand had been printed 2 days earlier. By 11:18 that morning, Marlene turned a failed tow into an official-looking war. I was standing at my kitchen counter, with the violation notice spread flat beside my coffee cup, when my phone buzzed. The email subject line was in all capital letters. "Final compliance demand commercial vehicle removal." It came from the Cedar Ridge HOA management address, but the language had Marlene's fingerprints all over it. The email said my F-250 violated Cedar Ridge Estates Community Standard 8.4. It said I had refused to cooperate with a board-authorized removal. It said the following charges had already been applied to my homeowner account. Initial violation fine, $250. Emergency enforcement fee, $300. Tow dispatch charge, $175. Administrative processing fee, $75. Total due immediately, $800. If the truck remained visible after 48 hours, daily fines of $250 would begin. Continued noncompliance, the email said, could result in referral to legal counsel and possible lien action against my property. I read that last phrase twice. Possible lien action. That was the kind of phrase designed to make your hands go cold. It did not matter whether the threat was premature, weak, or wrong. It sounded serious enough to scare a normal person into paying. And that was the point. I looked out the kitchen window at the F-250. It sat exactly where it had sat for years. The faded blue letters on the door caught the morning sun, Harris Coal Plumbing. The truck looked old, not abandoned. There was no flat tire, no broken glass, no weeds growing around it, no leaking oil running into the street. Nothing about it said nuisance except Marlene's opinion. I printed the email and placed it beside the notice. That was when I saw the second problem. The printed violation notice said, the board authorized enforcement on Monday. The email said, I had refused to cooperate with a board-authorized removal on Tuesday morning. But the tow dispatch charge had been created at 5:46 a.m. Before I ever opened my front door. Before I ever said one word. Marlene was not reacting to my refusal. She had built the bill before the confrontation even happened. At 12:07, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Alvarez from across the street. Tom, she said, lowering her voice, what is going on? What did Marlene say? There was a pause. She posted something on the Cedar Ridge community page. I had taken social media off my phone years earlier. Too much noise. Too many people yelling about things they had not read. Mrs. Alvarez read the post to me. This morning, the HOA attempted to enforce a lawful board decision regarding a prohibited commercial vehicle. The homeowner became confrontational, causing delay and additional cost to the association. Please remember that our rules protect property values for everyone. I closed my eyes. Did she use my name? Not directly, Mrs. Alvarez said, but everyone knows. Of course, they did. Within an hour, the quiet street became a rumor mill. Dan Miller walked over, while I was still standing near the truck. He had that uncomfortable expression people get when they want information, but do not want to look like they are taking sides. Tom, he said, is it true they warned you 3 times? No. He looked confused. Marlene said there were multiple notices. I've asked her to show them. He rubbed the back of his neck. I'm not trying to get involved. Lie, no. Another neighbor slowed her SUV as she passed. She looked at the truck, then at me, then drove on without waving. That bothered me more than the email. Money was one thing. Public doubt was another. Marlene knew exactly how to turn a property dispute into a character question. Suddenly, I was not a man defending his driveway. I was the difficult homeowner. The one costing the community money. The one refusing to follow rules. At 1:32 p.m., the sheriff's office called. Mr. Harris, this is Deputy Collins with the Wake County Sheriff's Office. We received a call regarding a vehicle dispute at your address. I took a breath. Yes, sir. Are you at the property now? I am. Was anyone attempting to remove the vehicle at this moment? No, the tow truck left this morning without taking it. All right, he said. We are not calling to enforce HOA rules. I want to be clear about that. This sounds like a civil property matter, unless there is a court order, trespass, or unlawful removal. That was the first sensible sentence I had heard all day. I told him exactly what happened. I explained that the truck was in my driveway, registered in my name, insured and operable. I told him Marlene had claimed a board vote but had not shown signed authorization. Deputy Collins listened without rushing me. Then he asked, "Do you have a copy of the tow paperwork?" "Not yet," I said. "The driver left before hooking the vehicle, but I have the violation notice and the email demanding $800. "Keep both," he said. "If they attempt to remove the vehicle from your private driveway again, call us while it is happening. Do not block the tow truck physically. Do not put hands on anyone. Just document." "I understand." "And Mr. Harris?" "Yes." "If someone is claiming authority from a board vote, ask for the meeting notice, the minutes, the vote count, and the written authorization. Verbal approval from one HOA officer is not the same thing as a court order." After the call ended, I wrote his name and the time on the back of the printed email. Deputy Collins, 1:32 p.m. I was not looking for a hero. I just needed somebody official to confirm I was not crazy. By late afternoon, the community page had become a mess, according to Mrs. Alvarez. Some people said rules were rules. Others asked why the truck was being towed from a private driveway instead of the street. One man claimed all commercial vehicles were banned, but another posted a photo of 3 landscaping trucks parked in driveways on the next block. Then somebody asked the question Marlene did not want asked. When was the board meeting? The post disappeared 15 minutes later. At 4:40 p.m., a second email arrived. Due to your continued refusal to comply, the HOA will proceed with enhanced enforcement if the vehicle remains visible after 9 a.m. Thursday. Current estimated balance after daily penalties, $150 by end of week. The board has already reviewed this matter. Do not contact individual board members regarding a closed enforcement decision. That last line made me lean back in my chair. Do not contact individual board members. Why would Marlene care if I asked board members about a vote they supposedly made? I opened the old Cedar Ridge folder from my filing cabinet and found the parking section. Section 8.4 was real, but Marlene's version of it was not. The rule talked about disabled, abandoned, unregistered, or inoperable vehicles. It talked about common areas. It required written notice and an opportunity to be heard unless there was an immediate safety hazard. My truck was not disabled. It was not abandoned. It was not unregistered. It was not in a common area. And nobody had given me a hearing. Then I checked the fine schedule. There was a $250 violation fine for repeat nuisance vehicles after notice. There was no $300 emergency enforcement fee. No $75 administrative processing fee. No rule allowing a tow dispatch charge to be billed to a homeowner when no tow occurred. Marlene had not just stretched the rule. She had invented the bill. At 5:13 p.m., I emailed the management company with 3 short requests. Please provide the meeting notice for the board vote, referenced in today's email. Please provide the minutes and vote count for that decision. Please provide the written towing authorization signed before the tow truck entered my driveway. I attached photos of the truck, the license plate, the insurance card, the violation notice, and the $800 demand. 10 minutes later, Marlene replied from her personal HOA president account. Mr. Harris, your attempt to challenge the board's authority has been noted. Further delay will only increase your financial responsibility. That was it. No minutes. Whoa, no vote count. No signed authorization. Just another threat. That was when I stopped treating it like a parking dispute. Because the document Marlene handed me had one problem. The rule she quoted did not exist. The next morning, I drove to the Wake County Records office before the HOA office even opened. I did not go there because I wanted a fight. I went because I had learned a long time ago that people can argue with your feelings, but they have a much harder time arguing with paper. The county building sat downtown between the tax office and an old brick courthouse. A woman behind the property records counter looked over her glasses when I gave her my address. Parcel map, deed, and recorded covenants, she asked. Yes, ma'am, I said. especially anything showing whether my driveway is common area, shared access, or subject to any special vehicle easement. She typed for a minute, printed a packet, and slid the survey map across the counter. This is your parcel boundary. Your driveway is fully inside your lot. The shared utility easement runs along the rear 10 feet, not the driveway. I looked at the black boundary lines on the map. There it was. Clean and simple. My driveway was not common area. It was not HOA maintained. It was not a shared access lane. It was mine. Can the H tow from here without proper authority? I asked. She raised both hands slightly. I can to give legal advice, but from a record standpoint, nothing here shows that driveway as HOA property. That was enough for me. I paid for certified copies of the deed, the parcel map, and the recorded covenants. Back home, I spread everything across my kitchen table. The CCRS confirmed what I had already seen the night before. Section 8.4 did not ban work trucks, plumbing trucks, or business lettering. Enforcement required notice, a chance to cure, and the right to appeal unless there was a real safety emergency. My F-250 had not blocked a sidewalk. It had not leaked oil. It had not created a hazard. It had simply offended Marlene. 11:12 a.m., an email arrived from Cedar Ridge Management. Mr. Harris, we have received your request for board meeting records. At this time, our office has no finalized minutes for an emergency board meeting held Monday evening. We are checking with the board president for clarification. I read that sentence 3 times. No finalized minutes. While checking with the board president. That meant the management company did not have the vote either. They were waiting for Marlene to explain the thing Marlene had already claimed was official. I printed the email and placed it behind a fresh tab in a 3-ring binder. Missing board vote. Then my phone rang. The number belonged to Alan Pierce, a retired insurance adjuster who had served on the HOA board 2 years earlier. Tom, he said, I saw the mess online. I figured most people did. I am calling because Marlene told people the board voted on commercial vehicles. I want you to know something. I stopped pacing. What? That rule never passed. I looked down at the highlighted page in front of me. Really? She tried. Oh, she tried hard, Alan said. Last spring, she wanted a blanket ban on work trucks, trailers, vans with business lettering. Anything she said made the neighborhood look blue-collar. We rejected it. Too broad, too many homeowners had service vehicles. Was it ever adopted later? Not while I was there, and if it had been adopted after I left, there would be an amendment, a notice, a vote, and a recorded update. Ask for it. I already did. It was quiet for a moment. Then he said, be careful. Marlene likes to make people feel isolated before she makes them pay. After we hung up, Alan texted me a photo from his old board folder. Item 7, read. Proposed commercial vehicle restriction discussion only. Look, discussion only. Lon, not vote. Not adopted. Not enforceable. By early afternoon, I had the driveway records, the actual rule, the missing vote email, and Alan's old agenda. But before I walked into a room full of people and challenged the HOA president, I wanted someone who understood HOA law to tell me whether I was seeing this clearly. There was a small law office near the county courthouse, with a faded sign that read Melissa Grant, Attorney at Law, Real Estate, HOA, Property Disputes. Her assistant said she had one opening at 3:30. I brought the binder. Mrs. Grant was in her late 50s, with reading glasses on a chain and a desk covered in neat stacks of paper. Well, she did not make me feel dramatic. She did not tell me to threaten anyone. She simply listened, then read. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair. Mr. Harris, she said, I am not your litigation attorney unless you retain me formally. But for purposes of this consultation, I can tell you what I would ask. I took out a pen. She held up one finger. First, where is the adopted rule banning your truck? with a second finger. Second, where is the board vote authorizing enforcement? Like a third. Third, where is the signed towing authorization issued before the tow truck entered your driveway? I wrote each one down. Ran, she continued. Do not accuse her of a crime. Do not call her a fraud in that room. Do not speculate about motives. You ask for records, ask for dates, ask for authority. If they do not have it, let the silence do the work. That was the most useful legal advice I had ever paid for. Before I drove home, I mailed a written request to the management company and the HOA board by certified mail. Meeting notice, minutes, vote count, signed tow authorization, fee schedule. Any adopted amendment banning commercial vehicles in private driveways. Return receipt, requested. When I got home, I added the receipt to the binder. That was when I finally opened my Doorbell camera app. The strongest evidence was still sitting quietly in the cloud. I scrolled back to Tuesday morning. The video showed exactly what I remembered. The tow truck backing into my driveway, Marlene standing beside it, clipboard pressed against her chest. Most of it was ordinary enough. Me asking questions. Marlene repeating that the board had already acted, the driver looking less certain by the minute. Then I reached the clip from 6:41 a.m. The camera had picked up audio from the porch better than I expected. Marlene was turned away from me, speaking to the driver, while I was still inside getting my phone. Her voice was lower but clear. Just start hooking it. If he comes out, we'll handle him. The driver said, do we have the signed authorization? Marlene replied, don't worry about the board packet. I'll get the signatures after he stops fighting. I froze. Then, I played it again. There was no yelling, no confusion, no room for her to claim she had simply misstated the sequence. She had told the tow driver she would get the signatures after the tow truck arrived, after enforcement started, after she had already claimed the board had voted. I downloaded the clip, saved it to 2 folders, emailed a copy to myself, and copied it to a flash drive. Then I labeled the drive in black marker. Driveway tow Marlene audio 6:41 a.m. I called Deputy Collins back at the sheriff's office and told him I had the county parcel map and doorbell footage. He did not sound surprised. He sounded careful. Mr. Harris, he said, keep documenting if the tow company returns call. While they there, don't confront anyone physically. I won T. And if the HOA is claiming a board vote, written records matter. I have a management email saying they cannot find minutes. There was a pause. Bring everything to your appeal hearing, he said. Paperwork has a way of clarifying things. The appeal hearing was scheduled for Friday night at the Cedar Ridge Community Center. Marlene's email called it a compliance review. I knew what that meant. She expected me to walk into that room embarrassed, outnumbered, and ready to apologize. Instead, I spent Thursday building the binder. Violation notice. Fine demand. Registration. Reinsurance. While certified deed. Parcel map. Section 8.4. Fine schedule. Management company email. Alan S. agenda photo. While certified mail receipt. Attorney consultation notes. Doorbell camera flash drive. On the last page, I wrote a timeline by hand. Monday, alleged board vote. Tuesday, 5:46 a.m. tow dispatch charge created. Tuesday, 6:32 a.m. tow truck enters driveway. Tuesday, 6:41 a.m. Marlene says she will get signatures after. Tuesday, 11:18 a.m. 800 demands sent. Wednesday, management cannot confirm meeting minutes. Thursday, certified records request delivered. I stared at those dates for a long time. The lie was not hidden in one dramatic document. It was hidden in the order of events. Marlene had built the punishment first, then tried to build the authority around it. By the time Friday came, she thought I was walking into that meeting to ask for mercy. But I had the deed, the bylaws, the county map, the missing minutes, a former board member's record, a certified records request, attorney notes, and one sentence from my own front porch that she never expected anyone to hear. Friday night, I walked into the Cedar Ridge Community Center with a 3-ring binder under my arm and a flash drive in my shirt pocket. The room was already half full. That was unusual for a compliance hearing. Most of the time, those meetings attracted the same 6 people and a few neighbors who came for free coffee. But that night, almost every chair was taken. People had heard enough rumors to be curious. Some thought I had broken the rules. Some thought Marlene had gone too far. Most of them just looked confused. That confusion was exactly what Marlene had created. She stood at the front table, wearing the same cream blazer from my driveway. Her clipboard sat in front of her, beside a neat stack of printed pages. The board treasurer, Ellen Brooks, sat to her right. On the far end of the table sat Mr. Leland, the HOA attorney. He did not look angry. He looked careful. Marlene tapped her pen against the table. "This compliance review is now in session," she said. "Mr. Harris is here regarding his refusal to remove a prohibited commercial vehicle from his driveway and his interference with a board-authorized enforcement action." A few people turned to look at me. I stayed seated. "The association attempted to resolve this matter professionally," Marlene continued. "Unfortunately, Mr. Harris chose to challenge community standards and create additional costs for the HOA." Then, she looked at me. "Mr. Harris, you may explain why you believe the rules do not apply to you." That was the first mistake she made in that room. I stood and carried my binder to the small table set aside for homeowners. "I am not here to argue that rules do not apply to me," I said. "I am here to ask which rule was actually followed." The room got quiet. Marlene gave a small laugh through her nose. "Section 8.4 has already been cited." "Yes," I said, "it has." I opened the binder. "This is the notice placed on my truck Tuesday morning. It says the board authorized removal on Monday night. This is the email I received later that morning, demanding $800. I looked back at the board. My first question is simple. Where are those fees listed in the adopted fine schedule? Marlene answered immediately. Emergency situations allow additional recovery. Can you show the section? She looked at Mr. Leland. He did not answer for her. Ellen Brooks pulled the fine schedule closer and scanned it. Finally, Ellen said quietly, I see the $250 nuisance fine. I do not see an emergency enforcement fee or administrative processing fee listed here. Marlene's jaw tightened. That is a management cost. Then there should be an invoice, I said, and there should be authorization before billing it to my account. A man in the back whispered, that's fair. Marlene tapped her pen harder. This hearing is about the truck, not accounting. No, I said, it is about authority. Then I opened the binder to section 8.4. Marlene told my neighbors that commercial vehicles are banned. This is the actual recorded rule. It restricts disabled, abandoned, unregistered, or inoperable vehicles stored in common areas or creating a nuisance after proper notice. I placed my registration and insurance beside it. My truck is registered, insured, operable, parked inside my private driveway. Marlene cut in. The appearance of the vehicle is the issue. Then, where is the adopted rule banning appearance? Well, she did not answer. So I moved to the county parcel map. The certified map shows my driveway is fully inside my lot, not common area, not HOA property, not a shared easement. Mr. Leland leaned forward for the first time. May I see that? I handed it to him. We studied the county stamp, then looked at Marlene. Was this reviewed before the tow was ordered? Marlene blinked. The driveway was visible from the street. That is not what I asked, he said. The room shifted. People were no longer watching me explain myself. They were watching Marlene avoid questions. Then, I turned to the board vote. Marlene stated several times that the board had voted Monday night, so I requested the meeting notice, minutes, vote count, and towing authorization. I lifted the management company email. The management office responded that they had no finalized minutes for any emergency meeting held Monday evening and were checking with the board president for clarification. Llewellyn Brooks looked up sharply. I was not notified of an emergency meeting Monday. Marlene turned toward her. Ellen, this was handled under president authority. Ellen's face changed. Then, it was not a board vote. A low sound moved across the chairs. Not loud, not dramatic. While just the sound of people realizing one phrase had been doing more work than the truth could support. Marlene's voice rose. The president has authority to act when community standards are being harmed. Mr. Leland finally spoke in a tone that made every whisper stop. Limited authority, Marlene, not unilateral towing from a private driveway without documented approval. Then Alan Pierce stood from the third row. Well, he had not told me he was coming. I served on the board when the commercial vehicle ban was discussed, he said. It was discussion only. It failed. It was never adopted. Marlene pointed at him. Alan, you are no longer on the board. No, he said calmly, but I kept the agenda. He held up the old page. He proposed commercial vehicle restriction discussion only. Someone near the front said, so it was never a rule? Llewellyn looked at Marlene, not me. Did you cite a proposed rule as an adopted rule? Marlene's cheeks flushed. The community understood the standard. That is not the same as a recorded rule, Mr. Llewellyn said. I could have stopped there. The room had already turned. But Marlene had not only bent a rule. She had tried to create a board action that did not exist. When the proof of that was still in my pocket. I took out the flash drive. There is one more thing, I said. My doorbell camera recorded the tow attempt. Marlene's head snapped toward me. It recorded me without consent? It is a doorbell camera on my front porch, I said. It records my driveway. Mr. Leland looked at the board. Play it. Llewellyn plugged the flash drive into the old television at the front of the room. The video opened with the tow truck backing into my driveway. The amber lights flashed across the screen. Marlene stood near the driver, clipboard in hand. Then her voice came through the speakers. Just start hooking it. If he comes out, I'll handle him. The driver's voice followed. Do we have the signed authorization? Then, Marlene answered. You want to worry about the board. Pack it, I'll get the signatures after he stops fighting. The room went completely silent. Not quiet. He ran silent. Marlene reached for her clipboard, then stopped. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Llewellyn Brooks slowly removed her glasses and set them on the table. Marlene, she said, you told us this was already approved. Marlene swallowed. That clip is taken out of context. Mr. Llewellyn's voice stayed even. What context changes? I'll get the signatures after. No one defended her. Not one person. Mrs. Alvarez stood. Tom fixed my sink last winter and refused to charge me, she said, and you made him sound like he was damaging the neighborhood. Another man raised his hand. She threatened me over my trailer last month, said the board had already decided. Then, another voice. She told me the same thing about my fence. The room did not explode. It unraveled. One thread at a time. Mr. Leland gathered the violation notice, the fine demand, the parcel map, the management email, and the certified mail receipt into one stack. Pending review, he said, I recommend the board suspend enforcement on this matter immediately and preserve all related records. Ellen nodded. Agreed. Marlene stared at her own treasurer. You cannot do that without a formal vote. Ellen looked back at her. That's interesting, Marlene, because apparently neither can you. That was the line that ended the meeting. Marlene had walked into that room as the president of Cedar Ridge Estates. But by the time the doorbell video finished playing, even her own board members would not look her in the eye. The first consequence came before Marlene even left the community center. Llewellyn Brooks made a motion to suspend every fine connected to my truck until the board and council could verify the records. Another board member seconded it. Marlene tried to object, but her voice no longer carried the same weight in that room. You cannot just reverse enforcement because of one emotional presentation, she said. Llewellyn looked at the stack of papers in front of the HOA attorney. This is not emotional, she said. This is documented. The motion passed 3-1. Marlene was the only no. That vote did not repair the scratch the tow hook had left near my bumper. It did not erase the way my neighbors had looked at me. I was the problem. It did not give me back the days I had spent defending something that should never have been questioned. But it did something important. It stopped the machine. The 800 demand was frozen. The daily 250 fines were halted. The threatened 1,550 balance disappeared from the online portal before midnight. I went home that night with my binder under my arm and the strangest feeling in my chest. Not victory. Relief. The next morning, Cedar Ridge looked different. The truck was still in my driveway. Same faded lettering, same toolboxes, same dent above the left rear wheel where Cole had backed into a loading post in 2009 and insisted the post had jumped out at him. But the neighborhood was not the same. Dan Miller crossed the street before I finished my coffee. Tom, he said, I owe you an apology. For what? For believing the first version I heard. That was honest enough that I could not be mad at him. Marlene made it sound official, he said, like the whole board had reviewed it. That was the idea. He nodded toward the F-250. I should have asked you before assuming. I shrugged. Most people do not ask questions when paperwork looks official. By noon, Ellen called me. Her voice sounded tired but steady. Tom, the board met with council this morning. Marlene was not permitted to chair the meeting. That sentence alone told me things had changed. Ellen continued. We are canceling all fines related to your truck. The HOA will reimburse the tow dispatch charge and remove all administrative fees connected to the attempted enforcement. The truck was never stored, I said. I know, she replied. That is part of the problem. We cannot find a legitimate basis for several of the charges. There was a pause. Then she added, we are also sending you a formal letter stating that, based on current records, your truck does not violate Section 8(4) as parked in your private driveway. For 3 days, Marlene had tried to make me feel like I was defending something shameful. Now the HOA was putting in writing that the truck belonged exactly where it was. At 2:16 p.m., the official letter arrived. The fines were canceled. The enforcement action was withdrawn. The board could not verify a valid emergency vote. No further towing action would be taken against my vehicle under Section 8.4 as currently written. I printed that letter and put it in the binder. Not because I wanted to keep fighting. Because people like Marlene count on decent folks losing papers. The next consequence came from the tow company. The owner called me personally the following Monday. His name was Frank, and he sounded like a man who had spent the weekend realizing his driver had been sent into a legal mess before sunrise. Mr. Harris, he said, we should not have entered your driveway without clearer written authorization. From now on, we require signed documentation before entering private residential property for an HOA tow. That would have helped Tuesday. Yes, sir, he said, it would have. He offered to send a written apology. I accepted. Then Frank added one more thing. Our driver noted that the hook made contact with the rear bumper before he stopped. If there is damage, send us the estimate. I had not wanted to make a fight over a scratch. The truck already had plenty of them. But my daughter insisted I take it to a body shop anyway. The estimate came back at $640. A week later, the tow company paid it. That number mattered less than the principle. Marlene had tried to make me pay for a tow she had no paperwork to authorize. Instead, the company that entered my driveway ended up paying for the damage caused by that attempt. By Tuesday evening, the story had spread through Cedar Ridge in a way Marlene could no longer control. The community page reopened comments after Ellen posted a board statement. It said, "No single board officer could authorize towing from private property without documented board approval and management verification." People started asking questions. Not just about my truck. About trailers. About fences. About late fees. About violation letters that had arrived with Marlene's name, but no board record behind them. That was when the board announced an internal audit. Marlene called it a witch hunt. Nobody seemed moved by that anymore. The audit took 9 days. At the next special meeting, Ellen read enough to make the room go still. The review found 9 enforcement letters in the previous 6 months that referenced board review, even though no matching vote appeared in the minutes. 3 homeowners had been charged administrative fees that did not appear anywhere in the adopted fee schedule. 2 tow warnings had been issued based on the proposed commercial vehicle restriction that Alan Pierce had already proved was discussion only. 1 homeowner had paid a $300 expedited landscape review fee that had never been approved by the board. When 4 violation notices had used the phrase closed enforcement decision, even though no hearing had been held. Ellen did not call it fraud. Mr. Lellen did not call it criminal. Nobody used words they could not prove. But everyone in the room understood what the documents showed. Marlene had treated proposed rules like adopted rules, when she had treated her personal approval like a board vote, when she had treated official-looking paperwork like a weapon. At the special meeting the following week, she sat at the front table without her clipboard. I noticed that first. For years, that clipboard had been part of her costume, like a badge she made for herself. Without it, she looked smaller. Ellen, read the reforms. You will tow towing from private driveways without 2 board signatures and management verification. No fines added unless the fee appears on the adopted schedule. No enforcement based on proposed rules, discussion items, or unpublished standards. Meeting minutes had to be posted within 7 days. Homeowners had the right to request the records behind any violation notice. Every disputed charge had to be frozen until records were verified. No board officer could use the phrase board decision unless there was a meeting notice, quorum, minutes, motion, and vote count to support it. It was not dramatic like a courtroom movie. No judge slammed a gavel. No sheriff marched Marlene out. Nobody shouted that she was going to jail. But sometimes real justice is quieter than that. Sometimes justice sounds like a room full of homeowners voting to take power away from the person who abused it. The reforms passed unanimously. Marlene did not vote. She resigned before they reached the final agenda item. Her resignation letter was short. She said she had served the community with dedication, but recent events had made it impossible for her to continue effectively. She never apologized to me in person. But the HOA did. 2 weeks after the tow truck came into my driveway, I received a reimbursement check for $175, a letter withdrawing every charge, a written apology from the tow company, a $640 repair payment for the bumper scratch, and a separate letter from the board acknowledging that the enforcement action had not followed proper procedure. More importantly, the violation was removed from my account history entirely. Not marked resolved. Not marked forgiven. Removed. That mattered to me, because I had not been forgiven. I had been right. I stood in my driveway with those letters in my hand and looked at the old F-250, The scratch near the bumper was repaired. The paint was still faded. Cole's name was still on the door. My daughter came by that evening with the kids. My grandson ran his hand over the blue lettering and asked if the truck was famous now. I laughed for the first time in days. No, I said, just stubborn. My daughter smiled at the binder on the garage workbench. Uncle Cole would have loved this. Till I looked at the truck again. We would have told me to charge them labor. The truth was, I did not keep that truck because it impressed anybody. I kept it because it reminded me of every cold morning, every long job, every handshake contract, and every mile my brother and I drove trying to build something that belonged to us. Marlene saw an eyesore. I saw a lifetime. And in the end, that was the difference. She thought authority came from a title on a board roster. I learned a long time ago that real authority comes from the deed, the record, the rulebook, and the truth you can prove when someone tries to rewrite it. That old truck never moved from my driveway. But Marlene's name came off the HOA office door by the end of the week. I did not beat her by shouting louder. I beat her by keeping every document she hoped no one would read. If an HOA ever tried to fine you for something on your own property, drop your story in the comments. And if you believe homeowners should know their rights before a Karen tries to rewrite them, subscribe for the next property line justice story.